respected chair, Professor Vyasa Bhatt, my teacher in Allahabad University, Professor Jatasankar, my PhD supervisor, Professor D.N. Yadav, and friends. I am lucky to have 3 teachers here present in my presentation. So I begin my presentation with Guru Vandana. And the title of the presentation is whether Vedic authority foundational. What I have tried to do here is to indulge 3 philosophers into a debate which is going on currently in contemporary Indian philosophy.
Which Ranade are you referring to?
This is Sir R.D. Ranade.
R.D. Ranade was much earlier than Daya and Mohanty, and he could not have intervened in between the debate between Daya Krishna and Mohanty.
That I'm going to clarify that. I'll clarify that, sir. Recently there was a seminar in Allahabad University on R.D. Ranade too.
I think there are 50 years gap is there.
Yeah, that I'm going to have deconstruction of Ranade's views and bring out the debate between Daya Krishna and Mohanty. What I'm going to do here is that Daya Krishna in his seminal work, 3 Myths of Indian Philosophy, he has tried to prove that in that paper that there are 3 myths about Indian philosophy, and it is good for the growth of Indian philosophy as soon as we debunk those myths and come out of those myths. So, what are the 3 myths that he talked about? I am going to take into account the 1 myth, and these 3 myths basically has been reflected upon by J.N. Mohanty, but in this presentation I am not going to take into account all the 3 myths. Only 1 myth I am going to take. The myth that Daya Krishna talked about Indian philosophy are 3. Number 1, that Indian philosophy is spiritual. According to Daya Krishna, it is a myth and we should not stick to it. Number 2, Indian philosophy, according to Daya Krishna, it is a myth that Indian philosophy is based on the authority of Vedas, and this is not true according to Daya Krishna. And number 3, according to Daya Krishna, the division between Gnostic and Gnostic schools of Indian philosophy is also a myth and we should not hold it. Out of these 3 myths, Mohanty basically accepted Daya Krishna's position about the first myth. The first myth as enunciated by Daya Krishna, and Mohanty says that yes, Daya is right in saying that Indian philosophy is not spiritual and it's a myth, and therefore it's a myth to talk about Indian philosophy as spiritual. So according to Mohanty, Daya is right and this myth has to be debunked. I don't agree with Mohanty on this issue, and but that is a separate presentation, that needs a separate presentation. I am coming to another issue. Whether Indian philosophy is spiritual or not, the debate between Daya Krishna and Mohanty needs a separate presentation. I am not going into that. Here, the 2 myths, that is the second myth, that is according to Daya Krishna, Indian philosophy is based on the authority of Vedas. This is basically the issue which I am going to take up here, and the third myths also I am not going to take into account. So the issue is that whether Vedas, Upanishads, and Brahman Granthas, that is Smritis, could be regarded as the basis of entire Indian thought or not. This is the issue. And in this context, what I am going to do here is that according to Daya Krishna, Vedas are not could not be regarded as authority because there are so many reasons for that, and I will go into detail the reasons, and then I will bring out the point of view of J.N. Mohanty as to how they could be criticized on these points, and Vedas could be regarded as authority. But I find, this is my point of view, that is that J.N. Mohanty's reply to Daya is not sufficient, and to support my view, I have deconstructed Ranade's point of view in his book, as mentioned earlier. This is in brief I am going to do here. In the end, I am going to show as to how the problem, that is a myth raised by Daya Krishna, is a pseudo problem. So I am going to begin with the the so-called problem and going to end with the so-called pseudo problem. This is in brief the presentation. So now I begin here, and this is the background in which I am going to deal with this, and these are the references, and then the purpose of this, as I have already recited, and these are the Monti's point of view seems pertinent. However, his response to theirs is derived on the force needed. What I am going to do is to provide force to Monti's presentation point of view, so that Monti could be provided sufficient proof from Ranade, with Ranade's support, so that he could properly debunk points raised by Dayakrishna. And this is what I am going to do this year. Now, Dayakrishna is relentless in attacking the notion of the authority of Vedas. He holds this as an unfounded myth about Indian philosophy, and for him, other myths are the characterization of Indian philosophy as spiritual and the division of Indian philosophy in many orthodox and heterodox schools. So these two I am not going to take into account here. So let us concentrate on the first one, the myth that Indian philosophy is based on Vedas. This is the issue, this is the problem, this is the myth which raises acceptance of the Vedas as an authoritative basis for one's philosophical system. As far as I can see, the only legitimate meaning of such a claim in the philosophical context would be to maintain that the Vedas contain the ultimate philosophical truth, and that the test of the truth of a philosophical position is whether or not it is in accordance with what is written in the Vedas. Basically, I have underlined here, these are the 2 points that according to Dayakrishna could be regarded as the denotation of the term, that is the meaning of the term, that is what is authoritative, that is the Vedas contain ultimate philosophical truth, number 1, and the second is that the test of truth of a philosophical position is whether they are in agreement or disagreement with Vedas. These are the 2 points basically you will find in the conclusion that I have criticized, and I have suggested as to that these points, I mean the authoritativeness of Vedas could be delineated, could be defined in a separate manner, different manner. Premises of Dayakrishna. Number 1, the premises of Dayakrishna's conclusion is that Vedas and also Upanishads could not be regarded as authoritative texts, are as follows. I have quoted Dayaji. Number 1, these are points. There are 8 points. These are first 4 points. Number 1, the classical texts of various schools are not commentaries upon Vedas or Upanishads. Various schools, 9 schools of Indian philosophy, basically they are not basically mere commentaries on Vedas, so they cannot be treated as based on Vedas. Number 1 point. Number 2, Vedas are plural. So if Vedas are plural, they cannot be regarded as the basis of any thought, because they themselves are different, many, 4 namely. And the authority of Vedas was not established even during the time of their composition, which spans a course of about 1000 years. This is the 3rd point. And the 4th point of Dayaji is that there are disagreements among those who uphold the authority of Vedas regarding which portion, subject matter, purpose of the Vedas are to be maintained as authoritative. So there is no agreement among those who accept the authority of Vedas as to what is the purpose behind, and what is the purpose behind that Vedas, and what is the portion, which portion of Vedas should be regarded as foundational, and which subject matters of Vedas should be regarded as foundational. This basically, there is no agreement among followers of Vedas. So according to Dayaji, this Vedas should not be regarded as foundational of Indian thought. Then next, according to Dayaji, Vedantins basically recognize the authority of the Vedas, but they also maintain the authority of Gita and Brahma Sutra, which are not parts of Vedas. So you have, if you are saying that Vedas are authority of Indian thought, and then you are saying Gita is also authority of Indian thought, and then you are saying that Brahma Sutra is also authority of Indian thought, then which one is the authority of Indian thought? This is the 5th point of Dayaji. The 6th point of Dayaji is that for Dayakrishna, even sutras of various schools could not be regarded as authority. For example, what is the authority of the Nyaya Sutra after Ganges? Because Ganges is the landmark in development of Nyaya thought. So as Navi Nyaya and the old Nyaya, there is a distinction between the methods of Nyaya itself. So that is what the point Dayaji brings. And what is the authority of Nyaya Sutras after Ganges? This is true also about the sutras of various schools and what follows thereafter. For example, the great subsequent thinkers such as Ramanuja, Madhava, Nimbarka care little for Brahma Sutras. So they didn't care much about these texts. So how can they be regarded as having based their thoughts on Vedas? And the seventh is Buddhists and Jainas have their own texts. So Buddhists and Jainas thought could not be regarded as the base of Vedas. And the last point that he says is that there are important thinkers and important books, but none is vested with a divine or superhuman authority. So this is what the conclusion of the last point takes into account everything what according to Dayaji, how Vedic authority could not be taken as the authority of all Indian thought. Then it is the conclusion of that Krishna maintains that the concept of Vedic philosophy is a contradiction in terms and holds that Vedas enjoy only circumscribed authority. He concludes that the notion of Vedic authority is a myth, and this is what the Purva Paksha of this presentation is. Now we are going to Uttar Paksha and presenting view of Jain Mohanty. Jain Mohanty, he says that while rejecting the Krishna's above mentioned claim, Mohanty delves deep into the issue and maintains the talk about the authority of Veda is a red herring. It generates a false impression about what goes on within the darshanas, and so it is rather weak to combat. He is going to criticize the Krishna that Vedic authority could not be treated as foundational. See what are the arguments Jain Mohanty provides and how his arguments are weak and his support from Ranade by reconstruction of Ranade. Now for Mohanty it's a weak thesis to defend because it is based on the defense of the thesis of the supremacy of Sabda Pramana or Shruti over other Pramanas. So here according to Mohanty the supremacy of Vedic authority is based on the presumption that Sabda Pramana is superior than other Pramana, Pratyaksha and Anumana, and actually the strongest Pramana is Pratyaksha Pramana. So how can you accept that this Vedic authority is superior than Pratyaksha Pramana? So that is why it is a big thesis according to Jain Mohanty, but he is going to say that how it could be stopped, like this kind of opinion could be stopped. He says that Mohanty accepts that the various schools of Indian philosophy have divergence of opinion regarding self, rebirth, karma, moksha, etc. Mohanty says that various schools of Indian philosophy, even Astic systems, they have their own opinion about soul. Soul has the Atma, whether it is the consciousness is the intrinsic quality of Atma or it is the quality of Atma, intrinsic or adventitious. So you can make the distinction between Nayaka's position of Atman and the Vedantic position of Atman. So there is a lots of differences among various positions on self, rebirth, karma and moksha. If you see that various schools, this is accepted by Mohanty as suggested by the Krishna. And then Mohanty is quoted here. The overriding importance, the supreme preeminence of the Shruti lies not in the fact that they are sources of our knowledge of truths that cannot be denied, but in the fact that they, for the first time, define for us the parameters, that is, the fundamental concerns, questions and basic vocabulary within which we, as we are our ancestors, have been thinking. The Shruti opened up the horizon, an open horizon to be sure, within which we have learned to think, interpret both ourselves and our world and question. And this is very significant. The primacy of Shruti then lies not in the being the strongest Pramana. Shruti is not this foundational because it is strongest Pramana, but in being the historical foundation of our modes of thinking. The modes of thinking, this is like a frame of reference. Shrutis basically provide us frame of reference with which we think, with which we move. This is according to Jain Mohanty could be regarded as the why Shrutis could be regarded as the basis of Indian thought in a way. And and not in the sense that Shruti is the strongest pramana. This I suppose that is something which is weak basis to go against the Krishna, and it needs a kind of support from Ranade's philosophy, which is earlier, earlier that 50 years as said. And now, crux of Mohanty's view against Daya. So, the crux of Mohanty's reply to Daya Krishna about the textual authority of Veda is, it is not important who wrote them. Mohanty emphasizes his own point of view. No less misleading is the inquiry, what did the authors intend to mean? The interpretive project has nothing to gain from these two questions. The first may lead to discovery of the fact but will not add to our understanding of the text. And the second is pointless, being in principle unanswerable. The text, the words themselves are foundational. Shrutis are foundational from the frame of reference point of view, not from the point of view of the strongest pramanas. We shall go on interpreting the text, not their authors. It is this infinite plasticity of meaning of text which does not allow us to say with finality what is the meaning, for example, of Mahavakya, but always leaves room for new possibilities of interpretation, which, as far as I can see, best captures and retrieves the sense of the talk of the Aparusevat Setu of Shruti. So, Aparusevat Setu of Shruti and Parusevat of Shruti basically is the debate whether the Vedas are words of God or whether they are not written by anyone. This would be not going into detail of that thing. The Aparusevat Setu of Shrutis are the crux of the issue that he has enunciated, as the response to that. Now, premises of Daya and Mohanty, different authors. Now, this is very interesting to note that different authors basically is the premise on the different authors, like Vedas are written not by a single person, but they are written by so many munis and rishis. So, this is the premise which is the premise of Daya Krishna as well as Daya Mohanty. But through this premise, Dayaji concludes the non-foundationalism of Vedas. There is no value authority according to Daya Krishna. From this premise, that is different authors. And from this very premise of different authors, Daya Mohanty proves that authorlessness of Smritis and foundationalism of Vedic authority. So, thus Mohanty replied to Daya's myth about the authority of Vedas, even if we take into account above mentioned Shabda Pramana issue also basically argues around the conception of authority itself. For Mohanty, as against Daya Krishna, a text could be regarded as foundational even if it has been subjected to numerous interpretations, as the text provides a horizon to debate and discussions about subject matters as described in it. Mohanty does not question about describe many premises of Daya Krishna. There are 8 premises. 8 premises as I have shown earlier slides. Mohanty does not question those premises, but he emphasizes only on the frame of reference, the importance of frame of reference provided by Smritis, not as the strongest pramanas, but as a frame of reference of Indian thought, to be enough for being foundational for Indian thought. Now, I am bringing, this is my reconstruction of Ranade, because why I am bringing Ranade, because I find that Jain Mohanty is saying that frame of reference is the sufficient for debunking Dayaji, but I find that the 8 arguments given by Dayaji has to be provided solid answer, solid reply, and I think Ranade in his a constructive survey of Buddhistic thought has given sufficient reply. Something has given which could be reconstructed to bring here in this context to reply to Dayaji, so that it would be proved that the myth which Dayaji is talking about actually is not a myth, but actually is something through which Indian philosophy moves. So Ranade propounded a depth foundationalism of Shruti text, that is Vedas, Brahmanas and Upanishads. Ranade holds that the Upanishads supply us with various principles of thought and may thus be called the Beresinthia of all the later systems of Indian philosophy. After rejecting the debate between Naiyayikas and Mimamsakas as to whether the Vedas and the Upanishads are Aparuseya and Paruseya as futile, according to according to Ranade, this debate is futile. Ranade endorses Vedantic meaning of Apauruseya as Purusha Prayatanam Vina Prakati Bhuta. Purusha Prayatanam Vina Prakati Bhuta. That is presented without effort. The Vedas are presented without effort in a flash of light, which presents Vedic text as foundational. As such, a presentation of the insight was obtained in the self-realization of the unity of consciousness. The Vedas basically are originated, they have been originated in a flash of light. So they are basically Purusha Prayatnam Vina Prakriti Bhuta. Without effort they have been composed in a flash of light. This is the Ranade's point of view, which makes, according to me, Vedas as foundational of Indian thought. And further, according to Ranade, Shankara holds that the fundamental platform of Sankarite philosophy is that the universe is one, that there is no difference within it or without it. And further, Ranade holds that self-realization is the next point which Ranade brings about in order to provide foundation to Indian thought. Now, this point is pretty significant according to me. That is, the self-realization is emphasized by all the schools of Indian philosophy, either Astik or Nastik. So, as different from Mohanty's notion of Shabda Pramana, a form of Shruti, as a response to Daya Krishna's critique that textual authority in Indian philosophy is a myth, Ranade's conception of self-realization with its ethical and mystical implications stands more subtle and apt response to Daya Krishna on the one hand and establishes textual authority of Shruti in Indian philosophy on the other. So, this is basically much logical than Jain Mohanty's reply. This is what I find in Ranade. That is why I think that this Ranade's book is very significant. And for Ranade, there are twofold aspects of self-realization. One is ethical and mystical. And if you take these twofold aspects of ethical and mystical, you can see that various schools of Indian philosophy, whether Astik and Nastik, they are emphasizing on the unity of consciousness. Unity of consciousness, that is mystical and ethical. You will find that throughout India even, and not only in text, but throughout India, we follow an ethical pattern. The ethical pattern is there irrespective of plurality of religious followings. Whether one is Buddhist or Jainas or Hindu or Sikh, you will find that they are following kind of ethical pattern from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. And that is something which is the foundation not only of Indian text but also of Indian life as well. So, Ranade on self-realization, he says that this self-realization concept I have chosen as the fundamental to Indian thought, and it is in the doctrine of self-realization that the ethical and mystical processes meet, a fact which we shall have to elude presently. It need hardly be said that by self-realization, as the Upanishadic seers understand that expression, is mean the unfoldment and the visualization of Atman within us. This is the definition. And then, why self-realization as a foundation? Why should we call it as foundation? The concept of self-realization can act as the foundation to all systems of Indian philosophy because it is their final goal. It is like the concept of hinge. You know, in Wittgenstein's Uncertainty, he talks about the concept of hinge, which basically is the foundation for entire epistemology of Wittgenstein. So this the concept of hinge is like concept of self-realization for Indian philosophy thoughts. And then self-realization as anti-materialistic. Ranade's emphasis on anti-materialistic aspect of living a happy life obtained through self-realization as an essential foundation to Indian life, culture and philosophy, inculcated through Vedas and Upanishads as logical grounding, because Charvaka's consumerism has never been emphasized more beyond any such prayer domain in any system here which could be inconsistent with Shreya. Even Nyaya system accepts Shreya and Prayer both. All systems of Indian philosophy except Charvaka, every system of Indian philosophy they emphasize on the combination between Shreya and Prayer. And from that perspective, I write here that the prayer from a certain level cannot be accepted without giving significance to Shreya. And in Shreya, the self-realization has to be given importance. And in brief, this is coming to end, and that is Ranade's concept of self-realization with its inbuilt ethico-mystical aspects, which is anti-hedonistic and ascetic, could be regarded as the basis of basic element of entire Indian philosophy. And as different from Mohanty's response, why Mohanty cannot be accepted in Toto? I mean, Mohanty's response is lacking something. I did not Mohanty's response, which is primarily based on the idea of Sabda Pramana. Two, there's with of the textual authority, Ranadi's response is based on the concept of self-realization. And it is a much deeper response to their Krishna's critique, as even heterodox systems follow the reality of self-realization. Whether Jainas or Buddhists, they all hold the moksha, nirvana as a goal of life. And I feel that the problem raised by their Krishna is a pseudo problem. That is, in my view, the problem or the myth of the authoritativeness of Vedas as raised by Dayaji is a pseudo problem. Why? For Dayaji, the meaning of authoritativeness is, this is the meaning, this is the denotation of, let us concentrate. All the problem originated because of Daya's denotation of the term authoritativeness. What is his denotation of the term authoritativeness? Is that Vedas contain ultimate philosophical number one, and number two, the test of truth of philosophical system is whether it is in accordance with or written in accordance with Vedas or not. These two, I suppose that these two denotations, these 2 points of denotation of Dayaji are something which is exclusive. Metaphysical framework provided by Shrutis and Smritis. And as different from above denotation of the term authoritativeness by Dayaji, we can fold its meaning based on the Christian notion of family resemblance, where there is no emphasis of essentialist delineation of the term, but where in a non-essentialist reading, there is an emphasis on the crisscross resemblances among various views, texts and schools in Indian philosophy. So this has to be emphasized, because Indian philosophy is gives it is not essentialist reading. Indian philosophy is not essentialist because it gives freedom to even Buddhists and Jainas. Irrespective of that, we have underlying metaphysical and ethical convergence on a particular thought of self-realization. Thank you very much.